Hello, this is Rodrigo from Take Right Action and Tempo Strip, and today I have an amazing artist, an amazing animator who has worked in Paramount Studio, Pixar, and Lucasfilm, and now he's creating his own project called Noria. His name is Carlos Baena, so welcome for this interview.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, first of all, the first thing that I would like to know for all the people who don't know you is to talk about your history and how did you start this career in animation.
Yeah, I moved from Spain to the US in '94. I originally was gonna study law in Spain, and that didn't really pan out. I'm glad it didn't. And I ended up moving here to study art. I spoke to my parents, and I wanted to figure out, if there was something else for me to do. So I moved here in '94, August '94, and through art school, I started discovering more about film and animation. I mean, I always loved films since I was very little. E.T. was the first film that I saw in the movie theater, and it kind of like made a big difference for me. But it wasn't until I moved to the United States that I started seeing the potential of maybe working in this industry. In Spain, at the time there wasn't such a thing as animation schools that I knew of, or film schools that I was able to go into. So yeah, I just started taking classes and working more towards that goal. And then in 97, 98, I was able to get my first job over at Wilmington, now Leica, doing commercials, animation for commercials. And then at that point, I just stayed here in the United States, working in different studios.
Awesome. So, in your path into being successful in this career, because I know many people who wants to be like an animator, a sketch artist, illustrator, whatever. But obviously, all society comes to them and tell them that they cannot do it because obviously it's a hard career. So, and I think that most of it it's because many people commit many mistakes that they are not aware of. Like they have this romanticized idea that they will live off their art without thinking on the present moment and how is the environment for business and careers and all that. So, being where you are, what do you think is the most common mistakes that people who want to be animators, illustrators, and all this commit like frequently without them even knowing?
That's a big question. I think, I mean, I can speak from my own experience and some of the mistakes that I did, which I thought was to always get ahead of myself and try to do things that at the time I probably shouldn't. Or I think animation takes a lot of patience and a lot of practice, and it does take particular way of learning. I think if you're trying to learn too advanced things too soon, you start to learn almost the wrong way. So for me, I kind of like I learned by wanting to do acting like right away, and instead of like learning some of the more basic stuff. And I think there was a turning point for me where like I decided to just kind of like put the computer aside and work on a hand-drawn 2D film to just kind of like learn a lot of the things that that you learn through 2D, just a lot of the basic principles. And that I could see just the difference in my work. I think that really helped me. So I would say, being patient and practicing are two of the things that that help the most. Also, sometimes we don't have the luxury of working wherever we want to work or doing the things that we want to be doing. So I learned, especially in the late 90s, to just take whatever you can take and continue figuring it out, or continue doing tests or continue getting better at what you're doing, but to not always just wait for that one call, just because it might never come, and it's almost better to just continue learning in different places, whatever jobs you can get. Sometimes I found that the journey is so much more worth the experience. So like going to like some of those places, like for me, I work in some places where I didn't even actually animate at the very beginning, and yet I had a great time. Like the people that I work with, like I have like some of the best memories. And then if you're lucky, but also if you're working hard enough, then you will get to the places that you want. So I would say, in an industry as unpredictable as this one, to have a part of you that also plays slightly conservative too, and make sure that you are also taking whatever jobs you are able to take.
Awesome. And also, I think you already covered a little bit of this, but what do you think people who are aspiring to animation should be focusing on into learning this stuff, but they are not doing it?
I think, I think it's like a variety of things. I mean, I think people that aspire to be doing animation is what I went through. It was like there was a stage where all I wanted to do was to work at Pixar, and that was my goal. And that almost got in the way of like, wait a minute, why do I wanna, why do I wanna work there so bad? What is it about Pixar that is making me want to work there? And then it became this whole transition where it was like, well, I want to work there because I love the characters that they're creating. I love the movies and the stories that they're creating, So by thinking more in those terms, it started making me think, then that's probably more what I need to be learning, instead of having like the goal of being like the place that I want to go to. Is like, it became more like, well, why do you even want to animate in the first place? Why do you even want to, and then from breaking that down, it was more like, well, I love acting and I love putting myself in different characters and thinking of stories and figuring out ways to display all these things in such a way that it entertains audiences in one way or another. So I guess my advice from that is, instead of thinking like, I have to work at that studio, it's like to ask yourself the question is like, why are you even doing animation in the first place, and why do you even want to work in films in the first place? That's a much bigger question to ask yourself. There's a quote by Eric Goldberg that I always love, which is, just love it. We spend crazy amounts of hours or time or years or decades doing this art form, and if you don't have the motivation or the passion to endure these crazy long hours, then then there's an issue in there. So do it because you love it, which it always stuck to me when he said it.
Awesome, that's amazing. And talking more about animation, what is your technique in animation? Like, how do you like to do it best?
You know, just for full transparency, I haven't been animating as much in the last few years as I would have liked, because there's a lot of other areas when doing the short film that I had to work on. The last year I've been getting back more and more into animation, which has been great because I missed it a lot. I don't know if I have a technique. I think for me the technique is like what is it that I'm trying to say, or what is it that I'm trying to do, and to spend as much time planning whatever it is that I want to say through the animation before I even touch the computer. The reason for me being is that I really want to make sure that whatever it is that I'm animating is gonna be worth it for whoever it is that is watching it. You know, I went through these stages where like I would just do animation tests, and many of them will have just a lot of the standard choices in animation, a lot of the standard things that you would almost expect. And I think as you do it more and more, you start to kind of like go back and be like, well, there's like a million other ways that you can do these things. Why am I going to like the most the most obvious ways? And that was kind of like a big moment of realization for me, in terms of like approaching animation in a different way. So I guess I don't know if there's such a thing as having a technique. I mean, I block the shots in a spline mode. You know, I try to learn the step mode, and I fail miserably trying to do that. So I just basically block in a spline, and then I keep on asking myself, and I keep on writing notes in terms of like, is this gonna be fun to watch, or is this gonna be, does it have emotion, does it have like, you know, entertainment, you know, is it gonna engage an audience? So that's the number one, I would say, for me. And then you go into the computer, and then you figure it out. I mean, I found that if you don't know the technical issues, then you figure them out. You know, you ask people that know more than you do on that stuff, and eventually you figure out ways to put it out there. But I think for me, ultimately, it's more like, what is it that I'm putting out there?
Awesome. And in all these areas, like, is there something that you don't like of your work, like of animation itself, of all the areas? Like, for example, clients asking for many changes or things like that.
What do you mind repeating the question? Like, what do you mean?
If there is something like that you don't like about the professional area of animation as a whole.
Or is there something that I don't like? I wish it was more accessible to make financially. I mean, I think one of the hardest things to see in this industry is everything is so decided by the numbers and by how is it going to do at the box office and that opening weekend. If the opening weekend fails, then the whole thing has failed, and there goes like 4 or 5 years of people's lives and hard work out the window, and that frustrates me sometimes, I think, because there's so much more that can be done. And also sometimes it's almost like now the window and the window of time for a movie to kind of like prove itself is so much smaller. I mean, I remember in the 90s or even early 2000s, like a movie, basically would be a movie's success would be decided by the long term. So some of my favorite movies, like Office Space or Fight Club, they didn't really do well at the box office at first, and then throughout DVDs or VHS, they started finding its voice, and I think that part is a little tricky, given the place that we are at right now with the industry, where the budgets, especially for animation, are rather large, and there is less and less opportunity to see more different things, and I think we all want to see animation being pushed in a lot of different ways. It doesn't even have to be the like the horror, like the one that I'm working on. It can just be done. It can take a lot of different avenues, and I wish I would see more of that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, for example, I always like 3D animation and all that, and I always complained that there wasn't like too many movie animations dedicated maybe towards an adult audience. There is all the 3D movies that are coming out are just for kids, and yeah, like when I saw Lenora, it was like, oh, finally, like something I can enjoy.
It's I think as you do more and more of this stuff, I think for me, I know the moment that I'm doing the same thing over and over and over, I think there's a part of me that wants to try something else, and I think Noria came out of that feeling of I've been working on great movies, like amazing movies, and yet when I would go home, I would only be watching live action movies, and there was a part of me that I was like, in the 90s I would be also watching animation movies, and now I'm not watching them as much. So like, what has changed in here, and so a lot of it was for me to try to work on something that I myself would want to watch at some point. Whether people would enjoy it or not. I think sometimes you do these things, you do them for yourself first, and you just cross fingers that people out there might like them, but you have to do them for yourself. Like, you have to get it off your chest and fall hard if you have to.
And when it comes to animation and all these skills that you have now, was there something like, or many things that are really important that did you learn outside, like college and art school and all that?
You mean through the industry or through
your own experience?
Yeah, I think through college I will learn certain things. Through working at studios, I learned some other things. Like working at studios, like for example, working at Pixar, you learn so many different things from these great directors that are there. I got the chance to work with, with Brad, John, Lee, like every director being so different from one another, and there's so many things that you learn, like almost weekly, just by watching them direct these movies. So that was a completely different experience than my experience going to college. I mean, I think college for me became more like, you have all these things that you get to play with, and you don't know what the hell is gonna come out of that. You just play with them, and 3D and animation was one of those where I had no idea what arcs and overlap and posing or any of those things were. I just wanted to move stuff on the computer, and it's not until later, through learning more, through college and through studying other people's work, that you start to realize, oh wait, there's this thing called rules of animation. Okay, let's start applying it. And there's this other thing. So I think you learn different things in different stages. I think throughout this process, I have learned so many areas that are at first might seem like they're small, and yet they contribute so much to the overall creation of an image. You know, not just animation itself anymore, but there's a lot of other things that the layout department is doing. There are things that the riggers are doing that is making the animator's life a lot better, you know. Sometimes it will be like little things. It's like, you know, can we add like a little control to have a particular shape in the hand? You know, things that I think when you're working in bigger studios, you don't notice it as much as, you know, when you are doing something personal, where you just see just kind of like how hard it is to incorporate a lot of these things to the project. So I think every area has the thing, you know, has different things that you learn throughout the process.
Awesome. And talk to us more about Noria. What is it about? How did you came to this idea?
I did. I think around the time I decided to take time off from Pixar. I have been working at Pixar for about 10 years approximately. But there was one thing that I've always wanted to do that was, you know, kind of like inspired by some moments, you know, some moments in my life, and I always wanted to kind of like get back to that feeling. So like Noria kind of like started. The planting seed was a particular moment in my life, and I started expanding based on that. You know, I would do sketches just in terms of like what that moment made me feel, and they were, you know, probably sketches that, you know, it would make no sense to anybody else, but to me, I would just think about the moment and just start drawing, and then it kind of like elaborated from that, you know. So by the time I think around 2010 is when I was starting to just kind of like talk to different friends. Toy Story 3 had just come out, and I was already working on Monsters University, and and there was some interest from some artists to help me on this project. So I decided to take time off from Pixar to at least kind of like wrap my head around this project, you know. And yeah, we started working on it. It was a lot slower than any of us ever thought it would be. But I wouldn't change one thing about the speed of the process, the whole process itself, the people that have been on the project. It's all been pretty amazing. It's kind of like a lot of the learning has been. I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't replace anything. So
awesome. And how much does it take, like, to do an animated sequence on your own?
Oh, I don't even know where to start with that question. I think you know, on this film we spent a lot of time doing previs. I got a chance to work with a Spanish artist named Fran Sousa, and we would just basically start going through the entire film. There was a time where the storyboarders that we were working with had other projects that they needed to get back into, and in hopes to just keep the wheel moving, I basically started just working exclusively on previs, and even just on a previs pipeline alone, it's amazing just kind of like how long some of these things take, and that's not even thinking like the lighting, the modeling, the whole like all the technicalities that happen with a project like this, all the referencing. So all that stuff just takes so long, and by the time you get to the animation, it's been almost like this whole other short film that has happened before you even get to the part where you are actually animating. So every area takes a long time, especially if you want to put as much care to it as you would like, you know. And on this film, we definitely wanted to like try to feel good with every department and every part of the process. So I don't think that answered your question. I'm just realizing. I think it does take so much longer than what you think it's going to take because of the lack of resources, the limitations. It usually takes so much longer than what you think.
I have a friend who does like 3D animations, and on one side, like it's good. Like computers have advanced so much that you can have like your own little monster there, doing so much more than we could do on our own. Like I don't know, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But it still takes a lot of resources. Like
yeah,
3D is really big. And also something that caught my attention from Noria is that you were doing it. Well, you're doing it in Indiegogo, and so far I've seen like the channel of choice, you could call it like that, is Kickstarter. So was there a reason why did you choose Indiegogo instead of Kickstarter, or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's this option that you have with Indiegogo, which is like the flexible funding option that we decided to use. With the internet, you just don't know how it's gonna go. So because we put all these resources, we had a lot of friends helping us create artwork for it. We kind of wanted to like at least just whatever the Indiegogo campaign was able to provide us to at least get that, instead of the whole all or nothing, which puts already a lot more stress than what we already have making the production. I think making the film already is its own campaign. And I think by doing that, it just kind of like it just made a lot of people, including me and my producer, just feel like okay, we're just gonna put it out there, whatever happens, and we'll just cross fingers that people react well to it and that they don't hate it. But we did feel good about what we had done to date. We still, we're actually the one thing that has come out of the Indiegogo is the encouragement to keep on doing it. To keep on doing something like this. We've had a lot of emails and a lot of people reaching out, telling us to like keep going. That they are they're reacting positively to what we are trying to do for the medium. So that's encouraging, and that makes us okay. As tiring as it is, let's keep moving forward. So
awesome. And also I wanted to ask you, like, what time do you work in this project? Like, is it like the whole day, or is it just in the day or in the night?
Currently I'm working 4 days, 4 to, well, some weekends as well. But about 4 or 5 days a week I'm working on it. And I work throughout the day and sometimes nights. I don't work too late in the night anymore, just because my body is like, no, you gotta get some sleep, man. I think 10, 20 years ago, my body would be like, yeah, it's fine. You can totally do that. But these days, it's hard to do things when you only have a few hours of sleep. So I've been trying to balance that. But it's always a little all over the place in terms of like which times do I spend more time working. I have a dog, and she actually helps me take a break in the middle of the day. So I've been kind of like blocking the times where I work to be more like early morning. Then in the afternoon, we go out to the park for like an hour or two, and then I come back and then I continue working. So that's worked out pretty good, actually.
Nice. So, is there like any advice you could do for people who wants to do crowdfunding, be Kickstarter, Indiegogo, whatever it is? And any advice or warning you could give us?
I would say that it's a second full-time job, because I think with these crowdfunds, it's always a fine line, because you don't want to put too much out there at the very beginning. I think it's more important. It's like a marathon. You don't want to like get tired in the first mile. You gotta get to the end of the marathon, even if you are like crawling on the ground, but you still want to get there. And for us, it's been trying to do that. I tell all my friends that after the Indiegogo, I'll go back to my cave, and they won't hear from me, even though right now they hear from me every single day, and they're probably sick and tired of hearing, of getting the reminders from me. But it's always a fine balance, I think, with a crowdfund, because people really are just donating not just money, but in some ways a vote of confidence, in whatever it is that you are doing, and you wanna do your best because of it. And that also applies to the crowdfund. Like whatever we are putting on the crowdfund is not just anything. We kind of wanted to like spend a bunch of time and make sure that whatever we were showing, presenting, giving as perks, that it wasn't just random stuff, that that we spent time and cared on them. We spent like at least 9 months that we spent. 9 months that we spent preparing the sculptures that we were gonna put for the crowdfund. Me and an artist named Victor in Spain, and I would send him revisions, and then he would send me revisions, and things like that are things that, like, well, I would love to have one of those. So I want to make sure that it's all the detail, and we've been trying to do that with everything that we've been putting out there for the crowdfund. So I guess my other advice would be, whatever you're doing for the crowdfund, to have to put yourself in that too, so that like whatever you are offering is something that you would like to have, or that that is that you're putting the time and the quality to that as well, or as much as you can.
Awesome. And any advice for aspiring animators who want to join this career?
Yeah, I would say to a few things. I would say to practice a lot, kind of like practice patience as much as possible, especially on the early stages where you just want to get ahead of yourself. The second thing is to reach out to the people that are around you, whether that's other students or people that have been on the industry, to just basically reach out and ask for help. as much as you need. Because sometimes we don't have all the answers. So it's nice to have people around us that can just kind of like lead the way, or at least pointing us on the right direction. That's really what helped me back in college. I will have some friends that if I would get stuck on different areas in my animations, they will be there to just kind of like give me pointers and help me and troubleshoot with me and things like that. I think like that's pretty important, to help all, the people that are around you, but to also not be afraid to ask for help. And then the last one is, ultimately we are doing all this to get, to make people feel in some way, whether it's like by making them laugh or cry or whatever it is, and to always keep that in mind when doing anything, even when joining, when wanting to become an animator. I think ultimately the goal is to entertain and to bring people on an emotional ride of some kind, and it always helps to just always keep that in mind, not to be, not to do animation just, because it's on the coolest jobs list in some magazine, or because it pays a lot of money, or it doesn't pay a lot of money, but to do it because you want to do these things and because you enjoy doing things like that. I think that's the bigger question. And then I would say my last piece of advice for new animators is to do not. There's a lot of choices out there in terms of learning, but ultimately, what I did find over the years is like to reach out to people that have gone through that journey, and to ask them, whether that's a student that just graduated from whatever, but just to ask them like all the pros and cons of whichever way they actually learn animation. Because for me, I have been working professionally for about 15 years, and I don't know what it's like to be a student today. So before anybody asks me like, hey, which place should I go, which place should I think it's a lot more fair for the students to just basically be like, actually talk to other students, from different places, just to see what is it that they got out of their education. I think that's important to always keep in mind. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to share in the YouTube video, in the link below, I'm going to share the link for the project Noria in Indiegogo, and also in this post. So for everybody who is watching this interview, if possible, please donate to this project. Let's make this happen. And if you cannot donate, if you don't have the money, then just share it with all your friends and talk about this. So then let's make this project happen, because it is amazing.
Thank you, Rodrigo.
Okay, so I'm going to finish this interview now, and thank you for giving us your time and all your advice here.
You bet. Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. See ya.